So I do want to add on that, for instance, in the dark days of 2019, um, 2020, 2021, 2022, you had a plethora of experts talk about one thing in particular, saying that it was the way to go and that you couldn't have a discussion about it. You couldn't debate about it, despite evidence showing the contrary. And so I think that that's a really good example of people hiding behind their quote unquote expert titles, and that kind of being, like we are the science, we are the bastion of information. Uh,
Yeah.
and that caused a big problem because you couldn't, and that to me that proved that there was something extremely fishy about the whole situation because you couldn't question it, because you couldn't
Right. Right.
tinker with the idea of it. You couldn't, it was this way or the highway, and anybody that thought differently, that didn't agree with the quote unquote experts, that, oh, you're taking horse medicine, or that, oh, you can't go paddleboard out on the beach because it's you're gonna get sick. In and of itself, it was preposterous, but people bought it hook, line, and sinker because experts were saying it. So that's a big issue too, is maintaining that open discussion within groups of people. And like you said, that's typically where the truth is because it
Well,
resonates.
yeah. And recognizing that that is science.
That is science.
Science is creative conjecture and collective criticism. So
Exactly.
if you're not doing that, they're not doing science. And Deutsch would be a fantastic source for elucidating that. I mean, he had the bestseller in 2011, but I didn't hear about his book until 2016 or 2017, and I've never met anyone who's read it. But I mean, it's just a slam dunk on the case. The
What was
the
that book called again?
the beginning of infinity
Beginning of
by
Infinity.
David Deutsch. Um, the his main thesis in his philosophy of science there is that the unit of operation, you might say, the source of science is explanations.
Mm,
Giving a cogent explanation that can be put to criticism and tested, ideally, is science.
yeah.
Explanations are the opposite of appealing to authority. So when someone tells you something and you say why, it's self-explanatory. If someone tells you something, say, um, you can't walk your dog between whatever the hours were, 12 a.m. and or 8 a.m. and 12, right? Why? Well, because we said so.
Yeah.
That's appeal to authority. Everybody knows that's bogus. That's an answer you give a 2-year-old.
Right.
Right? The answer we're looking for, the answer we're expecting that we all intuitively know is the appropriate answer is for them to say, well, it's because in those hours, uh, and to give you an explanation. And if the explanation makes sense, then okay, you're being transparent, you're being forthright, you're dealing with the problem as you should, you're considering ins and outs, this and that. I can tell that you're doing that because you allowed me to examine your explanation. So yeah, Deutsch is a great source on that, and I think he should get a lot more attention nowadays because of stuff like that. I mean, in addition to just being awesome on all fronts of he really wrote a tour de force in what he was going for. So
On the list.
so I mean, you got to deal with explanations. You don't deal with just
You have to.
authority saying this is how it is, because when someone says this is how it is, your question is why, because you want an explanation, because
And-
we intuitively know
Right.
explanations, that's the money, that's where things happen.
And I think, see, they knew, and I'll say this for, for anybody, whether it's scientists that hide behind the label of expert, it's like they know that when they provide a reason behind the why, it's so bogus that people aren't going to buy it in the first place. So they just hide behind the fact that, okay, we're the experts. We say that this is the way it is because the way this is the way it is. And there's no way you can
Right.
question because if
Well,
you do provide
right.
a reasonable, explanation as to why they're doing what they're doing, you can already pick out that it's bogus. So
Right.
it's a lose-lose for them. Them
Right.
not providing a reason brings up suspicion. But then if they were to put out a reason as to why, some bogus reason why, that would even generate suspicion in and of itself because the answer is just complete malarkey.
Yeah. No, there's no malarkey. We're supposed to have in 4 years of no malarkey, right?
Yeah, yeah, 4 years of no
I was
malarkey.
promised that, so that's what
I
I
was
assume is
promised that
happening.
too, man.
Uh,
We were sold a bag of potatoes, you know? But
um, but just on that note, um, that's the thing about explanations is once you put an explanation out there, it's open for criticism.
right.
You can't offer an explanation that's uncriticizable. So in a way, you're kind of forced to deal in the truth or look fishy, right? Because either, I mean, it might be what you think is the truth, and then you get it's not, and so you have to adjust what you're doing. That's fine. But when you try to fake an explanation, just like you're saying, well, when you offer an explanation, people criticize it and see if it holds up. And if it's not real, it doesn't hold up. So yeah, but it's like, you know, if you're going to go out and play football, you should put on your pads. You expect what's going to happen. Um, and so if you're going to offer an explanation, you expect it to be criticized. And so you try to make it as best you can and as truthful as you can. And only in the case where, for whatever reason, you're not going to deal in truth or uh, accept criticism, then you would put out a explanation like, oh no, it wasn't the obvious correlation of a place that's manufacturing the exact kind of virus that showed up. It's actually the super crazy coincidence that it happened to be this novel virus that happened to start in a wet market that was right next to the place where they were designing those things, but those are not connected whatsoever. No, let's go to the most bizarre coincidence first rather than go to the obvious explanation. Yeah, obviously that's bogus. So,
Derived from an animal that isn't typically sold in wet food markets, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
So, yeah. So
bonkers.
that's the good thing from our point of view about explanations is that they give you understanding and they are criticizable and they are testable and they compete and move us closer to the truth. And then obviously the bad thing about it from the perspective of someone who wants to use authority and skip collective criticism and actual truth seeking consensus, you are forced into a corner if you're going to deal with explanations. And then if you elect not to, it's pretty clear that you're not giving an explanation, and that's a problem.
Exactly.